Stas, thanks for being here today on InfoSec Trends. I wanted to talk about a very interesting topic that I think a fair amount of organizations maybe should consider thinking a little further into. And it's just how they evaluate risk, how they standardize risk across their organization, and how they put strategies in place to mitigate risk.
Sure.
If you don't mind, maybe just walk me through kind of the current state, 2022 right now. There's a fair amount of risks that exist across organizations. Certainly, they change industry to industry, size of an organization to another. But what is the risks kind of generally that are associated to not having a proper risk mitigation strategy for an organization in place?
Yeah, good question. Well, the short answer is most organizations don't do this, and they see it as a burden. And unless they have someone who is knowledgeable in this space, who's done it before, and like a risk manager, it's really difficult to quantify this. It's Organizations do this most of the time as a checkbox exercise. They write down some risks in an Excel sheet. They put some arbitrary numbers against it. They download a sheet off the internet. But the whole point of risk and tactical and strategic risk is that you can document your concerns at any level throughout the organization, and put it up onto a board, which should ultimately rise up to the C-suite for them to be able to acknowledge that there is concerns throughout the organization, what those concerns are. And if you do it properly, you can actually associate a monetary value with it, with some options on how to mitigate, and then whatever the residual risk and residual cost of that is. So like you can actually, once you get more, once you get going in the space, you can actually provide a lot of value very quickly to show an organization this is where your current risk levels lie, and this is where you could be if you take these steps. The next part is obviously the challenge of actually mitigating that risk and actually
Yeah.
monitoring it and making sure that someone's actually doing the work that's there to mitigate the risk. The checkbox exercise of writing down the risk and not doing anything about it is just that they're checkboxes. The vast majority of organizations I've been in, that has been the case, but this space is maturing quickly, and yeah, I mean, there's lots of good tooling out there now that can help with this, but a lot of people still don't understand the basics of risk management.
It's interesting when you say, there's a fair amount of tooling out there that maybe can help with this because you and I speak to a fair amount of organizations week on week, and the vast majority of them, the common denominator is they're running their risk register off of an Excel spreadsheet.
That's the vast majority. Yeah.
And if you just think about like stagnant data sitting on an Excel sheet, I mean, it's just like the precursor to, hey, there's a checkbox exercise. We're not
But it's
looking
also
to
really sensitive data as well. I mean, if somebody's actually taken the time to put the data and then they shared the risk register around or the list around, and it's gone, if it's not centralized and it's been shared around, like you're literally sharing your biggest vulnerabilities of your organization around, that could easily be leaked.
that's another interesting risk. Hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
so just trying to understand a little bit more and gain some context into maybe solutions that are out there right now. I know, there's the whole GRC world,
Yep.
maybe even the RegTech world plays a part in here, but, current tooling, what's kind of out there at a high level? What are the pros? What are the cons when it comes to evaluating the solutions today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is you have to find a tool that works for the organization as a whole. There's no point of running an enterprise risk register if the company's not ready for an enterprise risk register. It'll just be seen as a burden with too much overhead, and especially if it's not configurable to that organization. So taking out fields that are not applicable, putting in things that make the calculation of risks easier. This is all about ease of use, because unfortunately the risk register, well, some risks can be documented automatically. For example, like out of like a SIEM or like any type of logging or analytics. The vast majority of the other of like risk collection does stem from having to know the business and actually talking to the stakeholders throughout the business and understanding where the actual issues lie. As far as I'm aware, there's no tooling that does this. This is all subjective to the organization. So being able to capture it quickly and then managing it out is really, really important. But in order to be able to do that, you need to find tooling that fits the organization. So what I mean by that is, if the organization is just starting on this path, you want to be able to give them a simple risk register that's effective, that only captures the the necessity of what they're trying to do. And as the
Sure.
business grows and expands and they get more people and more technology and it gets more complex, then you need something that can scale with that business. There are products out there. Unfortunately, a lot of the uh, enterprise grade risk management software GRC is often out of grasp for
Right.
small to medium sized businesses.
You mean
Um,
financially, right? Just too expensive.
yeah, it's just too expensive,
Yeah.
and it requires somebody to maintain it all the time, which is not. And I mean, this is why it goes off the rails, right? You task somebody to look into this, to look after the GRC space. You bring somebody on board, they bring in the tooling, they set it all up, and then either they're not getting any throughput through it, or they leave, and then everything just falls apart. You need something that's easy enough that it can maintain itself, and that it can be passed off from one person to another, or it just looks after itself.
Yeah, I know, Stas. I know you've spent quite a lot of time even developing the risk register aspect of Compyl. So, help me understand how I think one of the challenges is all risk isn't created equal, and it varies from organization to organization. I mean, literally the same risk to a startup can have even a different monetary value that how you would evaluate that than a small to medium size or an enterprise. So, when it comes to implementing a proper risk register, what are some of the things people should be thinking about to just make sure that it's kind of tailored for them and it's not a checkbox exercise?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've made it as simple as possible. Ours works through a workflow. So the first thing is um, literally a bunch of questions to the appropriate person in the organization, whether that be an information security officer, an analyst, CIO, CTO, CISO, whatever the size of the organization is, whatever they have. And the questions are like, are these, what are you, what are you trying to accomplish with your risk register? What fields do you think are important to yourself? Like, what could happen, what the mitigating strategy is, what departments does this impact? And then what are the likelihood thresholds, what are the impact thresholds.
Right.
We made it really simple for them to input all of this data, so that they don't even know that they're actually completing a risk management policy by the end of it. So when they answer all these questions, and there's not many of them, because we get a pretty good sense after about 10 questions whether
Right.
they're at the startup standard or enterprise stage in their journey, and then we give them a solution. From there, all they really have to do is input the fields, and they get prompted to which fields they have to complete. We take care of all of the calculations, so we do all the calculations for the residual risk, inherent risk, residual risk, including all the costs and monetary value. We do all the follow up. So if somebody misses, their monthly update for the risks, we chase them up.
Yeah.
Reports are generated in real time, so anyone can log into the platform and see where they are currently on their risk journey. And we do maturity reporting quarter on quarter. We can do it. I mean, we can do it for whenever you want, but quarter on quarter is generally what works. So you can actually see, like, last quarter this year, we had $10 million worth of risk. This year, we're down to 1.5, and we decreased the risk for the organization by 80%.
Yeah.
Like that. It's really important to see those type of stats. It really buys management buy-in, and C-suite buy-in, into doing the right thing. And like ultimately, like, this is all about being able to document that you've thought things through, and if something happens, or something doesn't happen, you've got a record of the discussion and what was discussed, and what the decision points were made and why they were made. And often, like, you can use this stuff for things like vendor management as well. Like, vendors come in and they can ask you for all kinds of things that are not appropriate for the organization, for its size or its complexity, or it's because the potential customer that's looking at you is a tier one bank where they're expecting a whole bunch of other stuff that you just won't have in place because it doesn't make sense for you. But if you have that documented in a risk register, you can show them the decision and the path forward that you decided with your management team, And that often alleviates a lot of their problems. And they don't even raise that as a finding on their side. They actually just raise it as they have good practices in place and they thought about it.
Yeah, kind of just that last piece, right? I mean, it applies to many aspects, but I mean, you're shopping for a new vendor, you're looking for a new partner. You show them, the topic of risk or how you evaluate risk, how you're protecting, yourself as an organization, and have strategies in place to make sure that you're protecting your partnerships and. Pulling up an Excel spreadsheet probably isn't letting people go to bed like at night and feeling really really good.
Yeah.
but
But
that's
it's not even about that. It's just even if like it's just about the consistency and running it properly, right? Like
yeah
if there's a whole load of issues with running things on Excel sheets. Period. Like end user computing is a massive issue in itself, but like it's more the consistency, right? Like the maintaining the formulas, the calculations, the updates, the like it's just not a feasible way of doing it in an Excel sheet. Like, it's great as a starting point,
yeah.
but it's not sustainable.
The last thing I want to touch on is there just seems to be quite a bit of noise right now of just standardizing risk reporting for an organization, and maybe sooner than later organizations might kind of have a need or a requirement to find a way to do that and kind of report on risk. So I'm just curious from your perspective, what benefits something like that could bring, not only to an organization, but maybe even to like an industry, where people are actually required, organizations are required to report their risks.
We're definitely heading down this path. Like, I mean, the writing's already on the wall. You can see that, like, just like everything else, right? Like financial reporting, HR reporting, like profit loss statements. Like it's the same thing. Like there's no
Yeah.
reason why organizations don't have cyber risk reporting, or overall maturity reporting of the information security space. Like the problem with it is financial services, they might have a front office and a back office system and an accounting system, and then they can figure out all of the financing off the back of that. HR has one HR system, maybe two for payroll and one for people management, whatever. Security, you have dozens and dozens of point solutions that you have to bring all this data together and then make sense out of it, especially if you have to pull all the numbers in by hand or require somebody to input it manually. It's inconsistent, and there's no confidence in it. So even if you do it once, the numbers are so inconsistent from month to month that like people lose confidence in it. But that's definitely coming down the pipeline, and being able to aggregate all that data up into a central location from all the different point solutions is definitely coming as a requirement.
I know that risk reporting is something you're particularly pretty excited about within Compyl, and
Yeah,
it seems to not only be something you're excited about, but customers have been really happy to kind of just be able to spin those up pretty quickly.
yeah, it's cool. I mean, just to see. I mean, obviously, if it's going in the right direction, then everyone's happy. If it's going in the wrong direction, then they're not so happy. But it's just yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to see, like, all the trending data from quarter on quarter or year on year, like where companies started off with, where they are, and like and just quantifying the hard to solve problems in the organization, identifying the holes, and where potential and other investment needs to be made to be able to mitigate that risk to an acceptable risk tolerance.
Let's end on this point. I just want you've been a part of organizations big and small. You now running Compyl, co-founder, CEO. When do you like there has to be an acceptable stage where you're in your startup, you're in your growth mode, you're starting to experience some growth, and let's just say you're not really thinking about documenting risk, right?
Mhm.
Like, is there a threshold in your mind that somebody should think about of when that they need to change their thinking, or is it really just implementing the best practices from the beginning?
It's really there's no like when you're starting up a company, like you're buying some software, you're buying some accountants, sorry, some people to help you along the way, right? So you're going to have an accountant, you're going to have a lawyer, you're going to have some finance people, you're going to have HR in one capacity or another. You will have all of these things, whether that's software or people. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing the exact same thing with security. Like you should be implementing this from the get go. Like the whole point of risk management is that you remember to write down what the risks are as you go, because like I said before, a lot of this is a manual effort. So you have to you have to document all of this, and having having a location where you can store that securely, safely, and that has workflows over top of it, so you don't forget to manage it out, is really important. And there's no reason why an organization shouldn't have that right from the get go.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to think about it. Well, thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it. I think this is a topic that there's a lot of confusion about, and there's just, while there's a lot of information, it also means there's a lot of noise. And when it comes to evaluating solutions and when an organization should really think about implementing risk, I just think there's a lot of noise out there. So thanks for kind of cutting through that with us this morning. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Talk to you later.